Welcome to the Intercut podcast, the weekly show going over the TV, movies, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I am your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's made his lists and checked them twice, it's Arturo Zurita.
I have checked them 3 times. I've been working more overtime than Santa Claus, that's for sure. But hey, I heard Santa was working extra for you. Someone got a gift.
I gave that gift to myself, thank you. But we've also got someone who's home for the holidays, Amanda the Jedi. We're really happy to have her back for another best of. Thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Thanks so much for having me, despite what I'm sure is going to be some technical difficulties.
No worries.
Yeah, Amanda's working with less than stellar internet this time around, but we're going to brave through because we really want to talk about the movies and TV that brought us joy in this crazy year of 2020. Last year, 2020, we're recording this in 2020, but you all won't be seeing it until 2021.
We're still there.
We're still here.
In a little bit, we will get into our favorite movies of 2020. But first, make sure you're subscribed to the Intercut podcast, either the video podcast on youtube.com/intercutpod or the audio podcast available on most podcatchers. Also, follow Intercut on social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We are at IntercutPod. That's at IntercutPod. That's short for podcast. Also, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It makes me so happy. Shout out to Sebastian Blegard in Denmark for calling the podcast an amazing dive into entertainment.
Ooh.
Writing this podcast gives you a great look into film festivals, and for a movie aficionado such as myself, it's the best one out there. I don't know, man. I agree. Thanks for being subscribed.
I was like, what are you going to argue it?
Let's do it, man. Let's get into the best movies of 2020. A very weird year to be a fan of movies, a year where we did not see a lot of the films in theaters. Some of them we did. It started off, we were all at Sundance and got to see a lot of the movies that I think might even end up on our best of list, but the year quickly took a turn, and we ended up going mostly for streaming. How do you guys feel the changes to movies in 2020 ended up affecting what you watched and maybe what you compiled for your end-of-year list? Amanda, I know you felt differently about your list this year than you had in the past.
Yeah, I felt like last year especially, I thought that for me personally, there was just so many, I felt really confident about my top 7, and then after that some things started getting a little bit more interchangeable. But this year it's I know which ones I want in my top 5, but I don't necessarily know what order I want to put them in, and then anything from there to 25 is just a toss-up. So I'll probably be mentioning some things that I just know that you guys aren't going to mention because I just want to talk about them, or they hit me in a different way that it might hit other people. But yeah, if anybody's ever interested in my other top of, we all have letterboxed accounts that we kind of go through all this stuff on. So
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Art, how did 2020 affect you in movies?
That ritual, that church that I go to every Thursday, Friday, Saturday was gone. Obviously, it changes things. And I still think it was a very interesting year in terms of how many more people were able to catch festival picks that never were before. And now you have a year where a lot of people who may have not had the money to go to a Sundance, to go to anywhere else, you guys know the prices to all of that combined. You can get a whole pass from the comfort of your own home for less than the price of what it would have been the round trip airfare. So I do like that ability to be able to catch things from home. It doesn't replace the experience, but I think a lot of people who have never had the chance to go to a Park City, to go to Austin for South by or any of these others, this is a great opportunity. I'm hoping that they push it so that if you wanted to sell tickets to the public at a festival, I mean, we learned you can give press links, and I think we've also learned that the more voices you have out there, I think studios will learn when they want to manipulate who gets certain links, but I think the more voices that you have, the more word of mouth and the better chance that you have, because I feel we're competing more with people's attention now, especially in the age of streaming, than we have. This is the thing that's taking up 7 theaters, but there's still a lot of movies. I don't let anyone trick you in saying that there hasn't been a lot of movies. They just haven't seen enough. That's right, but they just haven't seen enough, and we got y'all right here. We got a great list for y'all.
Absolutely. There has been a lot of stuff out there to watch, and it's been in different formats. There's been the virtual theaters route, and of course, a lot of movies going to streaming this year. I think because of the limited collective movie experiences we've gotten, the lack of major blockbusters
Yes.
that were ultimately released in theaters, I found myself maybe craving some more genre movies a little bit more than in years past, whereas usually I feel like my best of lists are largely populated by dramas and more serious like filmmaking, if that's what you want to call it. This year I really sought out stuff that was comedic, stuff that was action-packed, stuff that had a sci-fi or horror element to it, and I think that was a little bit reflective in my list in a way that it hasn't been in years past. And maybe that's because we didn't have the experience of getting one of those movies every weekend to go see in movie theaters. But it's interesting to see what we have gotten. I think there's a lot of really interesting movies, a lot of movies that I liked quite a bit. Maybe not as many as I loved last year, but there's still so much to love about so many movies that came out this year. I know I have a long list of honorable mentions. I'm going to just go through a few here.
Hit us.
Black Bear, that we've talked about plenty of times on the show, comes up short of my list. I have both Mangrove and Lovers Rock listed in my honorable mentions. I loved all of the Small Axe series, but I'm not putting any of them in my top 10 here. I got Sound of Metal, which we just dropped an after credits about recently. All three of us really liked that movie in my honorable mentions. One Night in Miami, the stunning movie from Regina King that I honestly think I need to see again, and it might grow in my estimation.
For
but
sure.
I left that off. Gunda, the heart-wrenching black and white animal documentary that played the festival circuit, that might convert you into being a vegan. Didn't do that to me yet, but it's really good, guys. It's really good. Maybe at Art's badgering, I left Nomadland off my top 10. I want to see it again. I still have only seen it the once, but I loved it the first time I saw it, so maybe I'll regret that choice.
It's a good performance. It's a great movie.
And then a couple of movies that I loved from earlier this year, Dick Johnson is Dead, Da 5 Bloods, and First Cow are movies that I think are excellent, and I've put them on top 10 lists before. I'm just not going to do it here today.
Amanda, what'd you have off your list?
See, now, because he was just like, these were on some top 10 lists, but I'm just going to leave them off here today. I feel like my list is probably going to change. So there's a couple I am actually going to leave off right now, mostly because I've talked about them on this exact podcast 2 separate times.
We're wheeling and dealing.
2 separate times, and I've talked about them on my own channel, but I'm going to leave off Big Time Adolescence, which I still think is a really great comedy coming of age story. And it's one of those ones that hits really home for me and just personal experiences I had with trying to look up to these older kids who actually just got off on being looked up to by younger kids. And that made them feel cool. And then you grow up and you're like, wow, they were not cool because they wanted to hang out with 14-year-olds. So that's one for sure.
You had that at number 1 on your best of 2020 so far
absolutely.
list.
And I think that ended up coming about because halfway through that list, I was like, oh my God, that counts. That's this year, not last year. Because we saw it in 2019.
We were running the numbers. We went, Adolescence was this year?
Because we saw it in 2019 January. So that one's still really good, and I do still love it. And then another one that's been very high on my list for these past 2 years, To the Stars. I really liked. It was originally released in black and white at Sundance. It's been colorized. It's better in black and white, but it was still a really kind of beautiful story. It does fall into some of the negative tropes with certain aspects of portrayal in terms of age gap relationships and stuff. But I think that's one that's going to get left off a lot of people's lists and a lot of people's radars. So look into To the Stars, see if it's something you might be into. I've talked about it before on my channel. Big fan of that. Other than that, some ones that I think I liked a little bit more than some people, but I think would be worth a watch. The Gentleman was one that came out right at the beginning of 2019. I thought it was super fun. Guy Ritchie. I know a lot of people are like, it's like if Guy Ritchie was trying to be Guy Ritchie, but I thought it was fun. I had a good time with it. If you're into those kind of gangster flicks, I like the way they wield the story with it's Hugh Grant, right? Hugh Grant. Mm-hmm. I love the way they wind up the story that way. I love the execution of it. Big fan. And then Devil All the Time. I know that was kind of one that got mixed reviews for Netflix, but it's one of those
I
ones
like that one
it
too.
stayed with me. Like the more, like I'm gonna read I'm reading the book right now, so it's just one of those ones that really stayed with me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I might take another look at it. So
we bought it too.
hell yeah. So yeah, those are probably ones that are kind of like almost there, or just ones that I kind of wanted to just take a second to talk about. There's probably a lot more, but yeah, we'll go with those.
For sure. I agree with you, dude. That movie should have been longer.
Yeah, like everyone was like, it's long, but I'm like, you could go more.
And after you're done with the book, you're gonna see that.
Yeah, we could do miniseries.
For me, right, literally, exactly. But he wanted to shoot it in film, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like the movie. But then at the same time, it takes away a lot of the story because that's where all the budget went.
No, I totally get it.
I have my good top 10, and I technically have a top 5. I have these 4 that are right there trying to go in, but I want to give a shout out because usually the way that I try to categorize everything is by categories, by genres. And I didn't have a horror one that made it through this year, but shout outs to Invisible Man that I thought did a great job this year. Possessor was one of my favorites from out of Sundance. And I just recently even saw, this is more of a horror drama, but La Llorona I think was one of the top tier horrors. But again, this is a genre where we didn't get the Candyman we were supposed to get this year. A lot of the movies that may have garnered way more attention weren't released, like Zach said. And that goes also to the action sci-fis. I don't have any of these in my top 10. One is a miniseries. But I ended up liking Tenet, even though I haven't fully officially seen Tenet. I did enjoy it. I liked what Mr. Nolan was doing there. Doesn't come up in the top either, but also a shout out to Sputnik, shout out to the Paper Tigers, some of the action ones that were there. Some of the mystery thrillers that just didn't make my list would have been A Good Woman Is Hard to Find, White Lie. I'm not going to mention some of the other ones because I believe they'll be there as well. But Black Bear would have been my 15. Soul, Wolfwalkers, I'm thinking of Ending Things. I'm missing one because it's technically a doc. And then it would be my top 10. So there were a lot of great movies this year. I have a couple honorable mentions as well, but I think they may be on your list. But this was a completely stacked year. Is 40-year-old version on any of your guys' lists?
No.
But
very
shout
good.
out 40-year-old version. That was my 3rd favorite comedy of the year. There's 2 better ones. One's going to be on my list. The other one I'm not going to say because I think it's in one of y'all's. The Climb, the half of it. This was a great year for so many different movies that were out there. I'm not even going to get into my dramatic stuff because we're going to have this discussion right now. But a lot of stuff. And also the special auteur award that we give to Josephine Decker for Shirley, which was one of the great movies that came out and one of the best performances of the year as well. Which I know we could also split.
And congrats to Josephine Dicker on winning the special auteur award. It's not an award that we give out, lightly. It's something we take very seriously here at Intercut.
We stayed up late discussing that one. But nonetheless, I was able to compile, and I think we all got our top 10. This is the top 10 that are our favorites. I'm not saying they got to be your favorites. What I'm saying is if I was stuck in an island and that had a 4K theater for whatever reason that could stream stuff, these would be the 10 that I would buy for sure. I've thought it over and over through all of these movies. There's so many movies I love, but these are the 10 I would take. Damn. Who's starting it off?
You sound pretty confident. I think you should go ahead and kick us off.
I have looked at this list over and over and over again. And Regina King killed it with One Night in Miami, my number 10 pick. It kept fighting there with another little drama by Kelly Reichardt that kept coming in and in. But at the end of the day, One Night in Miami still found its spot right there at my number 10. I thought she killed it with the direction of a stage adaptation with Kemp Powers also being, I believe, a writer with the movie. Kemp Powers also co-directed Soul, so that man has been on a roll. But it's just the performances that she captures here. I know to a lot of people it may feel like it's all taking place in one place, but I love that bottle film style of it, and where you got 4 super iconic figures sparring. They're just going back and forth at each other ideologically, just as friends. There's some really funny quips, but the performances, this is the best ensemble cast in my opinion.
Yes.
And you can't have a best ensemble cast, I believe, without having a great director who is able to interweave the entire movie. I really like this movie. I think, Zach, it will go up on your list because one of the reasons why it's really high on my list is because of the discussions I had with you, and the way she pays a lot of homages to a lot of the iconography during that time. I absolutely love this movie. I kept arguing with Alina because she didn't like it as much, and I went, Nah, I did. King Regina, or they call her Queen Regina. That's what they were calling her. Fantastic movie. I highly recommend it, and it's going to be available on Amazon Prime. One Night in Miami.
Yeah, it'll be available, I believe, January 15th. So I'm really excited to revisit that one because it is such an interesting movie. And I think on one of the LME live streams we did, somebody asked us a question about whether or not a movie sticks to history, whether or not if a movie doesn't stick to history, if that is something we take away from it. And I think this is a great example of how you can use history and not necessarily something that actually happened, but the idea of something to speak to a greater idea. You know, Kemp Powers is imagining this world in which these people, these iconic figures got to collide and exchange philosophical views on this one night in Miami. And it just puts their legacies in contrast to one another in a way that I don't know if you could get if you were sticking to the real truth. So I like when you can use history in this way to speak maybe to a greater truth. And it is such an interesting movie. I'm eager, as I said, to revisit it once I get the chance to.
Kingsley was your favorite, right?
Oh, man, it's hard to pick a performance. But yeah, Kingsley Benadir is amazing in this one. Yeah, I feel like, you know, if one or two performances are good, you can credit the writing or maybe the acting. But if you got like 4 top-notch performances,
Leslie
you got
Odom,
a director who's really put them in that position. Yeah.
And Aldous Hodges, Eli Gore. All right, what do you guys have number 10?
Amanda, you want to go next?
Sure. Okay, so this is one I know that won't be on your guys' list, but I just felt like it spoke to me in this internet age, and I'm going with Spree. Spree, the Joe Keery crazy movie about trying to find relevance in an online world when you are just not the type of person who can do that, and the obsession that you can get. It's just this crazy off the wall, not found footage, but he's basically Spree is an app like Uber, and he's going around. He's got cameras set up everywhere, and it just starts off as like, yeah, this is how I'm gonna, like, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be exciting, we're gonna make some money, and it's just going to show you, we're going to make YouTube videos, it's going to be great. And then it just gets very sinister very quickly, and it's just this whole comparison to how far people will go in the internet age for relevance. I just really, I've always have such a good time watching it. I love the fact that they created a cringe compilation for Joe Keery to watch of literally the worst people they could find on YouTube. Literally went out of their way to being like, these are the people who act like they have 1 million subscribers when they have none. And I need to see the video just for my own personal, I just want to know who's on the list. But yeah, no, it's wild. I think that it really did something interesting in terms of how it was filmed and how it was put together. It premiered in the next category at Sundance, which is typically for things that do, you know, special editing and special filming, just kind of outside the box.
Searching was a next.
Searching was also a next. Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So stuff like that. I thought it was super fun. It's available now, and you should definitely check it out. So, my number 10.
And Amanda has a great video. She did a great breakdown of it.
Thank you.
Because this is becoming a genre in and of itself.
It is. Yeah. And
influencers.
I think,
killing themselves.
Influencers, like, just, and I do like the ending too. I will say that in this grand scheme of things, you end up with a lot of these movies that by the end seem like they're glorifying these people's behavior, whether they mean to or not. This doesn't happen here. It shows you how the internet starts taking it after the fact. But in terms of the person himself, yeah, either way, super fun.
Yeah, it's a movie that really is speaking to part of culture and internet culture that I don't know if it's been explored in film in this way. And I really appreciate that about Spree. And I really also think that the way that the film is able to embrace modern technologies, whether that's streaming or how people interact through rideshare apps and use it in a dramatic way is something that's totally in that movie's credit. One of the more interesting genre pieces that we got in 2020, for
Absolutely.
sure. Okay, so from one portrait of a forgotten man to a portrait of many forgotten people, my number 10 choice is Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets from the Ross Brothers.
Nice.
A movie that was in Sundance in the documentary category, even though we've since learned that is not so much a documentary. It's this amazing film that takes place at a Las Vegas dive bar in the last 24 hours of that dive bar's being open, and it shows you the comings and goings of the different bartenders and bar patrons, and gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the lives of these people who have gathered in this place, like off the beaten path, congregated because they are largely not successful enough to be in a better place. It's a collection of war veterans and failed actors and drunks, and I think it's just a really beautiful glimpse at the disparity of people we have in America that we oftentimes don't consider when we talk about this country. I think it speaks to in so many ways to the American condition. It's so smart and so acutely observed. It fooled the people at Sundance into thinking it's a documentary, because it really has this authentic feel, because he casts a lot of or the brothers cast a lot of non-actors and kind of just let the cameras roll for a lot of this. I loved how this movie felt. I have thought about it so many times, especially that ending, which is just devastating and cuts to the heart of it. I don't know, man. This is a great movie, and it stuck with me throughout 2020.
Agree with you. Between the work that Chloe Zhao's doing with the mixing of non-actors with real actors in Nomadland, with what they're doing here, there's going to be a new genre of filmmaking that I think is just going to take the storm. Because Fincher says it all the time. He's not trying to see a performance. He's tiring them out so he gets something raw and authentic. These are directors who are cutting to that chase immediately. I kept looking at one of the actors and I was like, why do I feel like I know you? But at no point did I question it. I'm reading the press notes once it's done, and I text Zach, was I duped? We have a great interview with them where they also broke down how they were able to help on Wendy, one of Zach's other films from Sundance that he got to catch. And they have a great documentary that will never be released, because these are gentlemen who capture the rawest of emotions, and that comes down to even making a studio film, and sometimes the studio goes, nope. But I highly recommend this one. This one's available out of VOD.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the underrated gems of 2020 that's worth catching up on. Art. Do you have another underrated gem at number 9?
How'd you know, Zach? There's a little movie that not a lot of people were able to see, but I got to catch at a little festival called Schliff. This is Schliff. I think I'm not saying that it's better than the Charlie Kaufman film, but I enjoyed it more than the Charlie Kaufman film. The Charlie Kaufman film would still be purchased. It's top 15. But Beast Clawing at Straws, Zach, is one of the best thrillers I've seen in a long time. I don't know how else to pitch it other than this. My fiance's father sat down and watched the entirety of this movie subtitled At the Edge of His Seat.
Oh, wow.
What'd Bong say? Those subtitles mean nothing.
They mean nothing.
This thing is one of the best thrillers of the year. It is out on demand. There's nothing else I can pitch it other than someone may find a bag, someone may have lost a bag, someone may have found a body. Catch it as soon as you can. My number 9, one of the best thrillers of the year, Beast Clawing at Straws.
Why weren't you in my DMs with that?
We talked about it on the streams. But I got to hit you with it.
I'm
I'm going to send you a copy.
You're definitely going to have to catch up with this one. It's really, really cool. The debut from Kim Young-hoon. I think there's a couple really interesting decisions they make with the linearity of this film that is just like an expert filmmaking move. And whereas the first 45 minutes, it's doing a lot of like setting up. Once you start to see the dominoes fall in this movie, it's such a pleasure. I really dug this one. I'm hoping more people get to catch up with Beast
I had to
Clawing at
surprise you,
Straws.
Amanda. You're going to watch it this week.
I'm probably going to watch it like right after we finish this, by the sounds of it.
She's
Jeez.
watching it right now. We can't see her camera.
It's
She's
true,
telling
I
us.
could be.
But no, I highly recommend this one. What do you got, Amanda?
Amanda, what do you got for us at number
All
9?
right, this is definitely one of those ones that probably could have been an honorable mention, but since I just bopped a couple things off, I'm just going into like how much personal enjoyment and how much I enjoyed the discourse around this movie. It's Happiest Season. It's Happiest Season.
Talk about it.
The gay rom-com starring Kristen Stewart and Mackenzie Davis with a surprise appearance by, oh my God, Aubrey Plaza. Had a moment there. Aubrey Plaza. And it was just, I didn't know she was going to be in it. And when she is there, I was like, oh my God, this movie just increased itself to that next level. It's not a perfect movie. It falls into a lot of like the trope issues of like the coming out stories that people are just kind of like, but it's like, there's been hundreds, maybe even thousands of these basic rom-com holiday movies. And like, we just want a couple. And to have it star Kristen Stewart is just great. So I don't know. It was super fun. It became a whole thing on Twitter. If you loved it, if you hated it, it was just this phenomenon of like Team Riley's or here's how we make it better and just things like that. I don't know. It was super fun to be involved with. I had a great time talking about it. So sure. Happiest season, number 9. I'm pleased.
What team were you?
What team? I'm always team therapy is what I said when I was filming it, basically, that I was team therapy. But I think that, yeah, obviously they did not do the best with Mackenzie Davis's character. It was really hard. I think they needed to show more early on with their relationship to really understand why it would be worth putting up with this behavior, because just throwing us in there like that, I'm like, this is horrible. And I get that that's a difficult thing to do, but don't put your significant other in that situation maybe. But I just love Aubrey Plaza, so I'm team Riley, but no one's losing here. All the teams are good.
Yeah. I was not like a huge fan of it, but I think the thing that I would absolutely give in this film's credit, and that is undeniable, is just the genuine chemistry and charisma of this cast. Like they're all really interesting to watch and fun performers, and just any scene where Kristen Stewart and Aubrey Plaza were together is extremely watchable for a variety of reasons. So I can't argue with this choice too much, even if it wasn't my favorite movie. But if you're going to choose something that I didn't love at number 9, I think I got to choose something that you didn't love at number 9. My number 9 film of 2020 is Tenet. Tenet is not a perfect movie.
Tell her the quote.
You don't have to understand it. Just try to feel it.
God. Amanda.
Don't try to
I do understand it because the whole movie is exposition, Zach.
She did feel it. That's all she felt. She couldn't even hear. She was the only one in the theater.
Tenet is not a perfect movie. I think we all can agree on this. And I admit that I spent the first maybe 45 to an hour of this movie being like, what is happening? I'm not following, and I don't get the mission here. But there is something about a Christopher Nolan movie where when he puts the pieces in place, he gives you these set pieces that you cannot get anywhere else. And there's a moment where things came together, for lack of wanting to completely spoil it, in this movie, that I was just in awe of, and I completely gave myself away to this movie. I forgave it for all its flaws, and I just wanted to enter the time pincer movement with Nolan and his crew, the temporal pincer movement or whatever. It's a movie that I still cannot explain to you half of the reason for the things that happen, but it was so electric and exciting. I gotta give it up to Nolan, man. There's a reason that he gets to make these kinds of movies, and it gave me a unique pleasure this year, in a year where we didn't get a lot of these high budget action blockbusters.
I think it would have been a really good miniseries. I think that's another one that if they had been able to flesh out the ideas more in a miniseries, I don't know, get some good audio mixing in there, could have been great. But it's just like, that first 45 minutes is just, it honestly feels like a bunch of exposition MacGuffin missions.
Y'all are saying 45. It was an hour 12, all right? I like the movie, but I'm going to be honest. I was there for an hour 12 going, what?
A not insignificant percentage of my enjoyment of this movie came from the fact that I was able to watch it with subtitles. I can admit
that's what I said. I've never wanted subtitles more in my life, because there's just certain moments where they're wearing the elevation mask things, and I'm like, excuse me, what? And then the dialogue I could understand
for you
was
how we're going to communicate
horrible. And my son, just like little things, and I'm like, of course, Jesus. Anyways, it's fine. Our Pets was great.
John David Washington is so badass in this movie. It's like a high-tech Bond film that Christopher Nolan didn't get asked to make. I like this one.
He talked about in the behind the scenes how he was like, he just let John David do what he needed to do. He's like, yeah, JD just he came in and did his thing. Yeah, he was able to get all of the classics to come in. You know, Michael Caine was sitting down in a chair because they say that's the way Michael Caine films now. He's like,
Sir Michael.
Sir Michael. He said you're gonna come to me. We're gonna be sitting the whole scene. That's what's gonna happen. Yeah, look, it's not the best Nolan film, but it's still Nolan being Nolan. Everything that you see on screen, he's blowing up a plane. If you're seeing a plane, it's the actual plane getting blown up. The biggest thing for me was I was like, has this man just hit rewind? Then I catch the behind the scenes, which I told Zach, catch it. It's an hour 12. Ironically, it's an hour 12 as well. He tells you he had them choreograph the scenes in reverse. I was like, Nolan, like...
Nolan, what are you doing? I do definitely need to see it again. I definitely do need to watch it like at home where I can turn on the subtitles and just enjoy it. Like it, because I did get to see it in theaters because again, I live in an area where at the time there was no cases and I wore a mask and I didn't touch anything. It was fine, but
you were in there like JD.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, relatable. I feel this. It was just like a couple things took it like to this level. It was so cartoonish. I didn't hate it. Like I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Like that's not a terrible rating. I just didn't.
That's fair. Nah, that's a really fair rating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about it like I think it's like a 2, but like I'm like, no, this is average.
Tenet is just a movie that gets kind of...
Because it was supposed to save theaters.
Yeah.
It gets trapped in the discourse, right? Like it becomes this political football, or like it becomes the movie where you express how worried you are about coronavirus for some reason.
And
it's like
killed
it's just a
theaters
movie at the end of the day.
HBO Max,
just
you know, all these different things that came with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm glad you had it that high. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Zach.
I really did. Art, what was your number 8?
A little independent movie that was able to hit the number 1 this year during the drive-in box office that we had. No one was paying attention to the box office numbers. Those are still numbers. And I thought it was interesting to see some people play it. Some people were able to dupe it, the system, and go buy out drive-in theaters for the little small movies that they made so they could say they were number 1. That was cute. But there was a movie that well deserved it called Swallow. Drama, mystery, thriller. It's described as all 3. I absolutely enjoyed this film that covers a housewife who starts swallowing objects that may or may not hurt her, and it develops into something just bigger. This was one of the movies, as soon as it ended, I played it again. Something with it just stuck with me. I made a whole video on it, so I have all my thoughts over there to get into the spoilery stuff. But I really enjoyed this film. It's been a blast seeing other people catch it here and there. Some people squirm because they just can't deal with it.
It's rough.
I think it's very effectively directed, and it's a very personal film for the director as well. And I like the behind the scenes that he talked about, how it was influenced by his grandmother and the stuff that she went through. And yeah, I really like how it ends. I like the performances in it. Shout out Swallow. Highly recommend it. Made it all the way to my end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, talk about really effective filmmaking. You know, something that helps me get through like a horror movie is I remind myself that it's fake and it's filmmaking, right?
Help.
They're props and stuff. But with this, they're getting you to that squirm, uncomfortable feeling just with like the sound of a gulp, you know, and
very good.
It's just masterful work. Yeah.
And shout out Haley Bennett, because everyone's always saying, hey, that's all the comments I got in the video. Is that Katniss? Is that Katniss? Haley Bennett. Yeah. I can't wait for her to get more roles. I think she is a star. She's a star. She just looks a lot like Jennifer Lawrence, and a lot of people confuse her, but nah, she is a star.
She did super good. Like it was
totally
just the timidness of her like character throughout the whole movie, and how like subdued she is, and you think everything's kind of like maybe okay at first, and then you see that next level of what's really going on, and why it kind of leads her to do the things that she's doing. It's just, yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
It's great.
It's good.
And she did a great job at Devil All the Time as well. She was in that movie for a little bit. I thought she was one of the better parts of right?
Yeah.
One of the better jobs in Hillbilly Elegy as well. So I thought she had a
decent
decent
the only
year.
Performance that I didn't think was like, over the top in Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah, Haley had a good year. She had a great year, and I think Swallow was her best.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. Amanda, what do you have at number 8?
Are we in 8 or 7? Or 8, my bad. Sorry.
8.
Okay. So my 8, again, this is actually probably where I would have put Devil All the Time, but I already talked about it. So we're gonna swap in for a genre flick. I'm gonna talk about Wolf of Snow Hollow a little bit. I know that Art didn't love this, but
cool.
I don't know. There's certain horror comedies that just hit me in a certain way. It's probably why I really like Spree too. But it's by Jim Cummings, the same guy who did Thunder Road. So if you liked the comedy in Thunder Road, you'll kind of be in for something similar, but this takes on a very different side of that, where he is a police officer again, but in a mountain town where it seems like, it's like, this is a very different story, but he's still a police officer. But he's in a mountain
police officer.
Yeah, police officer in a mountain town where the entire city is getting super paranoid that something is kind of killing people because these bodies keep showing up dead in these super grotesque ways, and it's always over the course of the full moon. So the whole city's in this like paranoid stupor, while he's just kind of like, no, this is a man. This has to just be a person. And it's just, again, showing his downfall as this whole story progresses out. I just think they did a really good job with, I really like it when you can do horror comedy and like both aspects come out strong. If I'm laughing and if I can genuinely feel that like tension and the horror and just kind of like the gruesomeness of it without it going too far or too little in any direction, I think for me, it really came together well there. I loved the performances. Jim Cummings, again, just acts, directs, writes. That's just kind of his thing. He does it really well. He does it really well, and he's got a particular style of comedy that I just am a fan of, and some people might not be. But if you're a fan of horror comedies or horror in general, I would definitely give Wolf of Snow Hollow a watch.
I'm always a big fan of Jim Cummings and the stuff that he does. I'm looking at my rating. I don't think I'd change it, but it is pretty harsh. But I guess when I added it, I'm like, oh, that's a 5 out of 10. This movie is expensive to rent, dude. When I rented it, it was so expensive. Even to purchase right now, guess how much the DVD is?
Is it like 19?
$23. Oh. $35 for the Blu-ray. It's like, I don't know if this is a shift in independent filmmaking where they don't have the means of something else, but I was like, I guess the price point is what took me a little bit away from it. But nonetheless, I prefer Thunder Road a little bit more to this one, but he still keeps that same comedic side of it. I'm looking forward to rewatching this one. I just don't want to rent it for the same price again.
No, that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
It is interesting the way that the new economic landscape of films has maybe shifted how we interact with some of these movies. You know, I think we've talked maybe off the podcast a little bit about how, you know, do you really want to spend the $20 to rent Ammonite if you're not going to get that much pleasure out of a movie like Ammonite? And they've already dropped that one down to $9.99. They cut the
price to $9.99 for Ammonite.
I just want to say, you guys know how much I talk. I love the gays. I love the lesbian stories.
You put Happiest Season on your
in my
best
top
of 2020
10
list.
2020. We all know it's not top 10 2020. What is maybe it is. It's fine. And don't watch Ammonite. Just don't waste your money. Wait till it's on a streaming service. I'm sorry. I love you, Saoirse, but no.
Y'all know I watch everything, and we were excited for this when this was announced at Sundance.
Yeah, we were hoping it was going to be the secret show. We were like getting those secret show tickets.
It wasn't even filmed yet. Yeah, we were sitting there like, I can't wait to see this. But it's because of you two that I watch everything. I reserved this one. I did not watch it. So, yeah, you know, Zach's right. You get to this point where it's like not everything is going to be a $19.99 rental. Not everyone's going to go for that. And then, even to purchase, it's like these are very, very steep prices just to own. So I'm very curious to see if this is going to affect just physical media releases in general and how streaming services are going to come up and try to swoop things up. But he in particular is someone that I'm looking at because he runs all his stuff. Like that is his mantra. And I always respect that, even if I don't like the movie as much as his previous one. I like his style.
Totally. My number 8 film of 2020 is The Vast of Night, the Andrew Peterson mystery sci-fi thriller. I saw this one late, but really, really dug it. I think the thing that is obvious when you watch this movie is you're in the hands of a director who really knows what he wants to show you. And the movie jerks you around a lot. It shifts from these walk and talk these back and forth crackerjack dialogue walk and talks to these long tracking shots to these standstill monologues to entire sections that are done without visuals on the screen. But I think it pulls you in and wraps you up in the mystery and really gives you the feeling of hearing something's out there, of feeling a presence but not knowing what it is. I loved getting pulled in by this movie, and I'm really impressed by Andrew Patterson as a filmmaker. I'm sure he's going to be given some huge budget, but I hope he gets to make more movies like this, because I think he did a lot with a little here, and I love that eye. So The Vast of Night, please check this one out. It's on Amazon Prime.
Haven't had a chance.
Very good filmmaking, even if it wasn't. Oh, you haven't had a chance?
No, I haven't had a chance.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
There's so many things on lists that I was trying to get to that I was just trying to go for the ones I thought I would like the most.
Always
but
growing.
Probably should have gone for some of these, like, maybe off the wall, kind of more polarizing ones.
Yeah, you got to split the difference between us, because I liked it a lot. Art was not as high on
Sometimes
it, so got to be the deciding vote.
But I will sell it. I do like the idea that he covers, and where it's able to tell this UFO story from the perspective of how do you ignore certain people who may have seen these objects, especially when the movie takes place in the time period that it takes place in. That really clicked to me on the second watch. But I can't wait to rewatch it as a podcast again in the future. It's a good pick. I'm very curious to see what people think. And like you said, it's on Amazon Prime, so you can catch it.
Yeah.
Definitely. Art, you're number 7.
Zach, I woke up in the middle of the night and I told you, I forgot a movie. I had to rearrange everything. First Cow.
Kelly Reichardt.
First Cow. Go watch First Cow. We're going to have a video. I'm not going to say anything more. I love First Cow. We recommended this, and some people said, why? Let us explain it in a little bit. I will just put it that way. It has been a Kelly Reichardt year for me. I've just dug into all of her movies. This is a director I wish I was following much sooner. Hey, better late than never. We have full spoiler thoughts on this film. I absolutely loved this film. First Cow. You could talk about it.
No. I mean, like, I don't want to get too much into it, because we will put out that Let Us Explain at some point. But I think the movie says so much without saying it explicitly. You know, it infers so much, and there's so much context behind the action in this movie, and the way that she's able to elicit that through these really naturalistic performances that get at these little moments that may not seem cinematic, but she makes them somehow.
Yes.
So much to be impressed by in this movie.
No stories thing, because we are saving that. I will just say this, because I think a lot of people are watching it and they're like, oh, this is boring. I am one, and Zach knows this, who hates, she even has a name for it, shots that just linger and don't seem to do anything. Cinema. You may feel this movie has that. I am telling you, I promise you that there is something to it all. And I felt it, and yeah, that's why we got a video in the works for it, but I absolutely adored this film. Went back and watched all of her stuff, listened to all of her interviews. She is a G. Give her more money. Give her a bigger budget.
Is First Cow your favorite Kelly Reichardt movie now that you've gone back?
I really like the Wendy one. Really
Wendy
like
and Lucy is so good.
Wendy and Lucy's
that might be mine too.
But yeah, no, that one was really good. I think First Cow is just dope just because the conversation you and I had back and forth. Your tweet about us being outside.
I saw that.
No, she's a master filmmaker, dude. Like, I don't know how else to put it. She is fantastic. I thought Never Rarely had some great direction and just restraint. There goes Kelly. Incredible. And shout out Never Rarely. Yeah. That's a fantastic movie. I hope it gets brought up soon. But First Cow. That's my number 7.
Nice.
Absolutely. All right, Amanda, what you got
my
at
number
7?
7's actually a kind of recent release. It's Soul. Can't even joke about that one. I'm going Soul. I hadn't actually watched, and cool. I know that there's a bunch I need to catch up on, but for whatever reason, I just had not watched an animated movie since Spider-Verse was in theaters. Like I rewatched other ones, but I still need to see Wolfwalkers. There's a couple of other ones I need to catch up with.
I think you'll like it.
I think I will too. But yeah, I got that link from Disney for Soul, so I was like, sure, it comes out tomorrow, but why not? So I watched it, and I am just a huge fan of these. I'm just calling them like give a shit movies. Like, it's not necessarily how you want to describe Soul, but it's just kind of like there's so much to care about in life, and I think that so many people, even myself in the past, you just get obsessed with this idea that you're born with a purpose, and if you like something, that's your purpose, and that's the only thing you can do, and if you don't get it, you're a failure, and your life doesn't mean anything. But that's not true, because like people have more than one purpose, and you don't even need to have a purpose, because life is just about living, and you can have such a huge impact on the people around you without ever even realizing that you've done it. And if you stop and think about about that, like that is beautiful. So Soul was like a really just beautiful experience to me as it like wound into its ending. I thought it was really great, and I love the fact that like the main character is so blatantly learning that as the 22 character is learning it. So this is I've seen this described a lot as like the Pixar movie for adults and not necessarily for your kids. And I might agree with that. I think it's definitely worth watching, even if you're an adult and you think you're too good for animated movies, or if you feel like you've just moved past your Pixar days. I think this is probably one of the best things Pixar has done in a very long time, though I haven't seen Onward yet. But yeah, I think this is probably the best thing they've done, maybe in like 10 years. But
I would agree with you there. Yeah, this
Great
is like
breakdown.
Stop and Smell the Flowers, the movie, right?
Yeah, it's just...
So y'all about to have me crying again for so
it's
damn,
just-
bro. What? Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely.
There's a classic screenwriting thing about your character has to have a want and a need, and the want should be different than the need. And I think the journey that we get through in Soul is like a perfect encapsulation of that idea that maybe what the character wants isn't what they need. And it's something that maybe we all could use a lesson on in our real lives.
I do also find we kind of live in an age where it's nihilistic jokes are up there. I make a lot of them too, but so many people, it's just fun to make depression jokes. It's fun to people make jokes about how they want to die, but it's like, at the end of the day, like, yeah, there's a lot of really horrible things out there, but the world is also a really beautiful place, and it would suck to just miss that because you're just so set on missing it, So I like anything that tries to encourage people not to do that.
Totally.
There was a great quote by Viola Davis, because I had just seen Ma Rainey before the movie, and then I see the movie, and it literally it was what she had just said. There's a difference between having a goal and having a purpose. And then I watched Soul, and I was like, oh, okay, so this is the feature film of that quote right there. Highly recommend it as well.
Yeah. So from probably the most family-friendly pick on any of our lists to the least family-friendly pick, my number 7 is Borat subsequent movie film.
That's so wholesome.
It's a family film. Look, father-daughter.
Totally. Yeah, it's got that wonderful story of a father-daughter bond and going on a journey together. It's like a road trip movie, right? Yeah. Borat doesn't need to be explained or introduced, does he? It's this iconic singular character, and nobody is making this type of comedy in the way that Sacha Baron Cohen does. And to me, I think the uniqueness of this, the singularity of his talent, is something that I wanted to celebrate and wanted to appreciate, because there's a lot of movies we may get in a year, but we are not getting another movie like Borat in quite some time. And I think the way that he's able to interweave this vulgar prank comedy with these deeper ideas about American racism or prejudice or unwillingness to acknowledge the evil that lurks within us is so clever. I just am in awe of his ability to handle both. And this movie not only has him doing those performances, but it's got Maria Bakalova in an amazingly comedic performance, just keeping up with him, going toe to toe on every comedic level. I enjoyed this one so much, and I thought about it so much. It's sticking with me, so it earned a spot on my top 10 list, even though I did not have it ranked very highly when I first saw it, but I couldn't get this movie off my mind. So it's grown a lot in my estimation, and I'm happy that I have it at number 7.
Dope. I'm really hoping she wins that Globe. And I'm hoping Borat 3 takes place online. Like, he got into that stuff about misinformation. We know how Sasha is as well. That'd be dope. And Borat 3 in the next category, all on screens. And it's just him online trying to do stuff. But that was
a mix between searching and Borat.
Searching for Borat.
Searching for Borat.
All right. What's your number 6?
I saw a buttload of documentaries this year, guys. So many. Some of my favorites will end up in our series list because they are mini-series, but there's one documentary that I saw at the beginning of the year that has survived all the way up to the end. It was my favorite of the fest at Sundance. The narrative ended up being a little bit higher. But out of Dick Johnson Is Dead, which is fantastic, Whirlybird, which also played at Sundance, A Cost of My Home is some of the most beautiful cinematography I've seen. Like that movie can be seen in silence, and you could just follow along with what's going on. Finding Ying Ying broke me. Welcome to Chechnya, one of the best And Cane Fire, probably a little tiny one that not a lot of people have seen, but I hope they get the chance to. But on Apple TV, you can watch Boy State right now.
Hell yeah.
And
Yes.
this was one of the best just first watch experiences, because I always talk about watching things with press. We're blessed, privileged, all of it, to be in there with the press lines, to be able to have access. But damn, they're boring, bro.
Yeah.
Like, they are so boring. There's no energy in there. I'm not asking for the midnight roars that they do for the late show.
Something
but
other
a little
than the
bit of
cell phone
energy.
scrolling.
Y'all know what I'm talking. Amanda Spencer.
Yeah,
we sit together for a lot of screenings. She knows what I'm talking about. Man, I had a connection with everybody there in that screening. We stayed through the credits. We looked at each other like we just sat through an experience. And I absolutely loved Boy State. Just the way that they were able to break down the documentary and who they were following from this actual, what would you call it? Like, camp?
Political
I know
camp
here we had
that they
like
have
Model
down in
UN.
Texas?
It's like weird. It's like Model UN, but it's literally just building an entire.
but for American
Yes,
politics.
because it's horrifying, Zach. Like, it's all.
It really is American politics just being reenacted through these kids and seeing what will always happen. We've gotten a lot of political films throughout this year, but I think this is one of the best ones because you're just seeing it from these boys who just, they want to be like, kind of, but they also, some of them want to do the right thing, and some of them are willing to do anything to be able to win. I found it fascinating. They say they're working on a girls' state because that is also a camp that they have down there in Texas. I highly recommend it. And I highly recommend it. It has stuck with me. Shout out Renee.
Renee.
I'm willing to fund you whenever you start.
Art, I kind of think we should host a podcast together. We're completely in line. I have Boy State number 6 also. This is a great documentary in every sense that you would want one to be. I think it's a riveting story where you just get brought into this election, even if it's like a faux election at this camp, and you really want to find out the outcome, but you also get introduced to these characters, and they're these deeply diverse, interesting people who have these differing political philosophies, and how they handle the situation is different, and the way that it speaks to a larger idea and how it reflects the frustrations we have with our own political process. I just think this documentary works on so many levels. It's so well done, so well made. Shouts out to Amanda McBain and Jesse Moss.
They killed it.
Who are excellent documentarians. And again, I'll use this as a chance to shout out Jesse Moss's previous documentary, The Overnighters, which stunning as well. So yeah, look, I'm going to watch any documentary these two make because they're killing it right now, 100%.
Yeah, I love Boy State.
Like this.
So yeah, you got Boy State at 6. I got Boy State at 6. Amanda, I know you like Boy State a lot as well.
It's
You tell her,
terrifying.
put it at 6.
Yeah, it's not my number 6, but it was terrifying. It was kind of terrifying, like especially like as a Canadian and watching in, and like there's people they'll go off, and like honestly, some of what scared me the most was when I just kind of looked up a couple of them after the fact, and it's like, what you were fighting for isn't even remotely close to what you believe in or how you act in real life. Like, why were you being a mini Ben Shapiro? Like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, it's kind of wild.
It's what happens when you're with a bunch of people.
Yeah,
they influence
exactly. It was wild. But yeah, no, definitely worth the time. It's not something I thought I would have been interested in, but like it really just grips you from the beginning.
Yeah.
Shout out Feels Good Man. That was a doc I forgot.
That's another good one.
Yeah, similar in a lot of ways. I rewatched Boy State closer to its release this summer, and that movie gave me a panic attack. We were still pre-election, and the world was exploding. It felt like everything was coming to an end, and Boy State reflected it perfectly.
Aren't gonna be all right.
Man, shout out to that movie. Nope.
The kids aren't gonna.
All right, my number 6.
All right, so what is your number 6?
I won't go too far into it, and honestly, this should be further down on my list, but this is where I'm going to leave it. I think it's higher on yours. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. What just a beautiful movie out of Sundance. I thought it was really interesting that this year we got 2 movies about a teenager getting pregnant and then having to travel across state lines to get an abortion, because that's what this one's about. That's what I'm Pregnant is about. They could not be more tonally different, even though they're dealing with the exact same issues. I actually also really liked Unpregnant, but that one's definitely more the like fun with your friends pregnancy movie, and this is I know it sounds horrible, but and then this is
it's true,
and this is exactly how difficult it is for you to get care in this situation, and it's like a very real fly on the wall movie where you're just following this girl who needs an abortion and her cousin who's coming along with her, and the things they have to go through in New York City, staying out alone all night when they don't have money to stay anywheres, and just the things that they have to do to get it done, and the little unspoken moments, like there's like a hand touching moment. There's a couple of them actually, but there's one really significant one that made a lot of people being like, I don't understand why they didn't talk about that. It's like they didn't need to, because everything that needed to be said was in that hand touch. It's a very beautiful movie, super well made, and I recommend everyone check it out. But that's all I'll say now, because I'm sure it's higher on Zach's list. Could be wrong, but
I think you're right. Art, I said my number 6 was Boys State, so we're on to your number 5.
I believe you called this a Jeff Bezos snuff film.
Yes.
Sorry We Missed You by Ken Loach was recommended to me by the one Karsten Runquist at TIFF 2019. He said, dude, have you seen this movie? I was like, nah, I missed it. What's it called? He said, Sorry We Missed You. I think you'd really like it. It is out on the Criterion channel, which I highly recommend. Nice. One of the best services out there.
And a bit of a flex if your movie's like, yeah, I'm new, but I'm on Criterion already. Like, we're serious here, guys.
What more do I need to do to pitch it? This is a crazy drama talking about the gig economy over in the UK, and in particular, just Ken Loach hating anything to do with capitalism whatsoever. If you thought Kelly was on their neck, this man has, like, he's choking them like Bart Simpson with Homer and Bart. I absolutely was floored by this movie. This is, again, another director that I'm going back and just listening to him talk for hours. He's got this energy. And when Zach and I were talking about this last night, he's searching up his filmography and he's like, 1966? He has been at it. Wow. He is a master at his craft. He does not give a damn. And in a world where we have filmmakers having to make these deals with really big studios and properties, and even now with streaming services. There was another documentary called The Dissident that played at Sundance. I don't know if y'all heard. That director made Icarus for Netflix and won them their first Oscar. That was able to get them everybody else to come work with them because they had their Oscar from Icarus. Well, the man made The Dissident. They told him, nah. And nobody wants to take that movie. So you're getting to a point where you have movies that certain services don't want to take because of, their distribution and whatnot. Ken Loach will never give a damn about that. I don't know how he gets his funding, but he finds his funding and he makes the movies exactly how he wants them to be made. Sorry We Missed You is a crazy family drama, but it's also just I don't know, how would you describe it, Zach?
I mean, it's so authentic in its presentation. There's nothing performative about the way it's presented. There's not like these extremely pretty framed shots or these monologues with, traditionally big acting. Shouts to Debbie Honeywood, who plays Abby in this film, who broke my heart more than once. She has a couple moments where she's expressing her anger, and whereas in most films, that's a moment for an actor to take a deep breath and really deliver at the top of their lungs. You get to feel how exasperated she is, how overwhelmed with emotion she is, how to express her anger is actually heartbreaking to her because she doesn't allow herself to go there in a lot of moments. This is a movie that just grabs your heart and tugs it out of your chest. It's just like it gets to this point at the end where something sad is happening and you kind of think, well, they need a couple scenes to resolve it, and instead it just ends. It just leaves you on the unhappy note. Not exactly a feel-good watch, but I think it's the movie we need for talking about the gig economy and how it is devastating a lot of low-wage workers.
And there's been a couple like it. Like Lapsus is the sci-fi version of that. Nomadland is a version of that. There's been various movies that have been like getting at this idea of how we're just becoming rats to a bigger system where it's the robot. You know, like in the movie, there's no one you could complain to because it's just whatever your marker is. I've done Amazon deliveries as well, so I understand the usefulness and I understand how this helps a lot of people, but there's also no checks and balances pretty much, and it's become a crazy rat race. Sorry We Missed You over on Criterion. It is an exclusive along with Young Ahmed, which I would also add there to the list. Criterion's actually building up to be a really good streaming service that doesn't just have classics. It's got some pretty good new ones as well.
Nice.
Absolutely. All right, Amanda, where are you at with number 5?
This is a movie that has been kind of like moving around my tops list, so I figure, 5's a good place for it. Black Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was my first watch at Sundance of this year. I saw it with Caitlin, actually. So, like, that was my first watch, and it was just... Like, there's sometimes you see movies and they start off your festival experience and you're like, how are we going to get back up to this level that I just reached of insanity? And it's just basically, it's hard to explain the movie. It's one of these ones that I don't really want to explain because I feel like the more blind you go into the experience, the better it is. Just know that this is probably the most like Aubrey Plaza role that's ever been written for her that she acts in. And you get to see a very full spectrum of her character where, at one point she's just, it's basically every single piece of conversation is, instead of trying to disarm people the way you normally do, it's almost like you're trying to antagonize the person. And instead of just giving into those conversational politeness things that people will usually do just to make things run smooth, she just goes the opposite way to always keep whoever she's talking to on their feet. And then it descends into this crazy breakdown area where it literally, everybody thought she was joking in the Q&A afterwards, because we were fortunate enough to get a Q&A where she said, this movie like ruined my life, like, and this movie emotionally and physically kind of like destroyed me, because some of the scenes were just so intense. And I'm sure it was still a slight exaggeration, but some of those scenes were just so intense to film. And the most intense one actually got pushed up on the schedule without her knowing because it started raining. So they had to switch the schedule around. And it's just one of those things that she had to give herself so into certain aspects of the role. And like, you can really see that on screen. And then it's like, it ends up making this weird, like multi-level meta in a movie that's already kind of going a multi-level meta. It's like, it has comedic aspects. It's a thriller. It gets horrific at times, but more just in the way that it's going to make you feel the anxiety more so than being a horror. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth the watch if you're in the mood for something a little bit different. And if you're somebody who's okay just not having a solid constructed movie that's going to feel like it has a solid point A to C.
There's no real answers. It's like a Rorschach, I would say. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
I mean, Zach,
it's however you want to take. There's multiple ways you can take it, and however you want to take it is probably right.
What is the black bear to you?
Yeah, what is the black bear to you?
But we know we've been following the director and like his background. I know Zach can speak on it more because y'all are practically friends.
Our parents go to the same Turkish restaurant. That's not friends, but yeah, Lawrence Michael Levine does these really great films where he's able to get you to these really uncomfortable conversations that feel natural, right? I think sometimes a fight in a movie doesn't feel like it got there organically, but the snide little comments and the little digs that people have at one another and the ways that they will push on different characters push on one another's boundaries in this movie is so uncomfortable and tense but real. I love so much about this movie. I definitely want to give it yet another rewatch because it's so good.
Yeah, I want to purchase
has many layers to it.
Absolutely
haven't compiled the list of actors and actresses, which I know is something we want to work on probably closer to the Oscars. I think she may be in my top 5. She has been underrated.
Too.
I think, because we really like her and we enjoy her. And like you said,
it's for Riley though.
Her 2020 and as a whole, you gotta get
her 2020
Aubrey
is just
Plaza-ness
the top 5, yeah.
Of it, I feel always takes up a lot of what we see in her performance, but we forget that she is still a really great actress, and I think this really showcased it. And I know that's something that the director really saw when they worked together on Easy, was that no, she actually does take this stuff seriously, and I think she knocked it out of the park in this one.
Absolutely.
She's great in Happiest Season, but I think a lot of her performance in Happiest Season is derived from her actual real life charisma and energy, whereas I think in Black Bear, she goes to some places that don't seem like they're part of her real life personality that surprised me as someone who is a fan of her, but doesn't always get to see her do capital A acting, right?
I gotta buy this movie. We gotta make a Let Us Explain on this. We gotta have to have a spoiler discussion together on this one for sure.
Have me on.
Absolutely. Okay.
Top 15 for me. We will.
We will do that. All right, from one of your favorite female performances of the year to one of your favorite male performances of the year, my number 5 is Bad Education with Hugh Jackman. I think we'll talk about it a little bit more later, so I'll save some of my thoughts.
I always forget that was 2020.
I know. I'm so happy it's on his list. I didn't think it would be on his list.
Well, look, it's a movie that I think really does reward the more you pay attention to it, the more that I've revisited it. I just find so many layers to it. There is the surface story about this embezzlement scandal at a school in Long Island, but I think when you get at the shared culpability of the people who are in this world and the ways in which it's a comedy of politeness in a lot of ways, where people don't want to say the thing they're really thinking, is so funny to me. There's a lot that I really love about this movie.
Yeah.
So we talked about it a lot this year on this channel. We've Let Us Explain. Shouts out to Corey Finley who joined us for that. But it's a great movie. I'm glad to get another chance to talk about it whenever you bring up Bad Education, maybe at number 4.
No, a little higher. But I agree with you. We only do interviews with people we like. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's not we did an interview, we like the movie. No, we only say yes. Zach was telling me, Cobra Kai season 3, we got it early. You want any interviews? I was like, Ralph Macchio? Nah, I'll see him later. He won't age. I only want to talk to somebody if I really love what they did. And we did 2-3 interviews this year. I know y'all were able to talk to the Palm Spring boys. But this... And what was your top 10 doc? This one was fantastic. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But yes, I agree with you. I'm so happy it's on your list, man. I didn't think it was going to make it. It's one of my favorite performances, too, with Hugh.
Yeah, I caught it at TIFF, so I keep forgetting.
And I hate both of you guys.
So I keep forgetting.
Hate both of you guys for catching it at TIFF.
Sorry.
Because I didn't get...
It's good. It would be in my top 10.
Yeah? Okay, cool. We all really like Bad Education. I think that's a great movie, again, with one of the best performances of 2020.
And it's on HBO Max, but when y'all saw it at TIFF, it was still Oscar eligible until HBO picked it up. But hey, at least it's available for everyone to watch.
Right. So what?
Shiva Baby is my number 4. A comedy made it onto the top 10 list. This is out of the park. Now, this comes out in March. But when we talked about it, I think TIFF had a release for it, virtually. Indie Memphis had a release for it, virtually. When we brought it up on Intercut and we brought it up on the LME streams, we started seeing all of our followers start watching it, and nothing was better than that. To talk about a movie that was at a festival, that they could literally click the link in the description and start watching it. It was playing absolutely everywhere. I saw it twice. It was just playing at all of these different virtual festivals. So it's fully not out, but I loved that experience of seeing people be able to catch it, because you weren't going to get a Nomadland link. It was very hard to get One Night in Miami, but there were so many Shiva Baby links. It should have premiered at South by. Didn't get the chance to, but it will be out for everyone next March. Bro, it is in my top 5. Absolutely adored this movie. This is a comedy on the next level. I loved this movie. I loved it.
I didn't think it counted. I thought it was way in. I thought it was so far into 2021 that it didn't count, so I didn't put it in my top 10. This easily would have been in my top 10.
I know. I go up to March. What would it be?
Yeah, I also didn't have it counting to my 2020 list, but look, you make a good point. This is a unique year in which a movie that's on the festival circuit actually is available for a lot of audiences.
Go check Letterboxd.
It's more accessible than ever, even if it isn't necessarily a full theatrical release. So I don't know, you're bending the rules a little bit, but I'm not going to complain.
March 15th. If it were to come out March 16th, then I do not count it.
Amanda, we haven't had a chance to talk with you about Shiva Baby yet. What did you think about it?
Oh, I loved it. I really didn't fully know what to expect going into it. It had originally been on one of my festival lists, but it took me a while to actually get the chance to watch it, sadly, just because I'm in Canada. There were some weird restrictions with some of the links, so it took a while to actually get it. But it was so good. I knew it was something that was on my radar for South by, but then it got canceled, so that just didn't end up happening. But oh my God, it's one of those movies that if literally 10 years ago wouldn't have been able to watch it. I couldn't handle that kind of anxiety. But now, especially where I have the ability to just shut it off and I'm not in a theater watching it, but oh my God. And it all comes down to that, again, a handhold at the end that just brought it together for me. I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. But oh my. Also, who just disrespects Diana Agron like that? No spoilers, but I just need to know. But yeah, holy.
It's Happiest season to the next level.
It is.
So if you liked Happiest season in 2020, get ready for this movie in 2021.
Except the cat's already out of the bag, but it's just one of these things that it's all like, it's not discussed. It's just like, no funny business.
It's great, man. The
Like,
performance
what do you
is
mean
just all
funny
around.
business?
The rewatchability is fantastic in this movie.
It felt real too. It felt very real. Like the way the characters acted. Like I find a lot of the times it feels theatrical, and I'm okay with coming of age stories where the characters seem like way cooler than teenagers could ever actually be. I'm like, this is fine. I like this. This felt very real with the conversations of like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, well, it's like we're just lining up some interviews, and it's just like the conversations so many of us have had with family members when it's like, what are you doing with your life? And it's like,
are you dating anybody?
Exactly. It's all those questions, and it's just, it felt real, but in a good way.
I think one of the marks of a really good filmmaker is when even those characters who show up for maybe 30 seconds and have one line of dialogue feel like a fully realized person, right?
Yes.
And every single character feels like somebody you might run into at one of these family gatherings. I mean, maybe not everybody, but at least me with a very Jewish family, I would have run into these types of people at many family gatherings. So, it's a world that is very anxiety-filled, but feels so authentic and is so funny. Shiva Baby is great. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more on Intercut as we get closer to its actual theatrical release,
For sure.
Arturo.
So good. I've never been more offended when somebody just pulls out a name for a movie like that. I was like, what do you mean? Shiva Baby, how you do? Because I was even going to ask about that when I was like, no, like people are still harassing me on Letterboxd about how I watched it. Like there's no way it's anywhere soon. And either way, I'm glad we talked about it. I thought that was going to be one of my like, keep an eye out for this movie. But yeah, so keep an eye out for this movie.
Definitely.
Right, so now it's my number 4.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like this is probably going to be higher on at least one of your lists, maybe. Minari.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that more, so.
I would assume, so I won't go into too many details, but just really beautiful, beautiful movie. Very confused as to where it's being classified in certain awards shows because it is a very, very American story about the American dream and the immigrant family. But yeah, really, really beautiful. But I'll save the rest for when we talk about it more.
Fair.
Very cool. My number 4 is a movie that I'm also expecting to show up maybe on some of your lists. Is Promising Young Woman going to be talked about later in this podcast?
I left it off just because we did the entire thing. That's one of those ones that's circling my top 15.
It's in my top 20.
All right, so I guess
about it.
It's up to me. I really dug Promising Young Woman. I love the dark world created by Emerald Fennell here. The way she's able to evoke this common idea but turn it into this suspenseful interaction is so interesting here, and I love reworking the idea of a revenge movie to be about a sexual assault, a moment in the past. I think it talks about these issues in a way that's so interesting and dynamic, and I think it does actually give credence to the real trauma that a lot of these things create, but it's done in such a entertaining package. Carey Mulligan is so electric here in the role of Cassie. The cast is stacked with really great performances, a lot from comedic actors that I like. Bo Burnham is so good in this movie. I was both entertained and intellectually stimulated. It hasn't really left my thoughts since I got to watch it somewhat recently. I really dug Promising Young Woman. I think it's going to be one of the movies that we think about a lot looking back at 2020.
I agree with you. This is why to me a top 10, I'll do the top 10. But to me, every year's got a top 30. There is more than 10 movies every year that are going to stick with you. This is going to stick with me for sure. Just, these are the 10 that I love the most, but that's still a top 20 for me. The rewatchability on that. And I'm just interested for it to still get released, because that's still one that the general public hasn't been able to weigh in on, a discourse that has changed so much since Sundance. So...
They're starting to, because it did release in theaters 5 days ago on Christmas Day. So so I could watch it here again now if I wanted to. But I'm already seeing different discourse. Like somebody that I watch a lot on YouTube ended up getting like a screener for it, and she loved it, and she didn't really know that there was kind of like these mixed ideas of discourse going on in the background. So I'm really hoping that we get these kind of like genuine watches that I know some people, just kind of talking to a couple people, thought that the movie was kind of going to be something else. Sometimes when you go into these, something that you think is a revenge movie, you're kind of hoping for a certain outcome. But like, this isn't supposed to be like an empowerment movie necessarily. Like, it has moments where she has a lot of power over the situation, but you're supposed to really kind of like walk away from it being like, she's kind of destroying her life on this path. This isn't something that you're supposed to be idealizing. This isn't something that you're supposed to be like, this is so badass. It's supposed to be kind of horrifying how far she's willing to go to do these things and how much she's willing to sacrifice. So I think if you go into it with that expectation, doesn't mean you're going to like it, but it does mean you're not going to be painting it with a brush that's just not the right brush, you know?
Yeah, I definitely think she's more anti-hero than hero here.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Fennel. She
There's
killed it, bro. She is great.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Definitely one to watch for whenever she makes another movie. Mm-hmm. All right, Art, I think we are at your top 3.
My top 3. Now, if I was part of the LA circle, I would consider this whole thing one movie with small acts. But I will be honest, I loved Lovers Rock. I loved Mangrove. Those would probably be, again, collectively in my top 50 movies that I would keep. Education, I'd say, gets even more into the top 25. But if if I could only pick one to fit in here, it is Red, White, and Blue as my number 3. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the whole thing as a collective, I think everything that Steve McQueen did here is beautiful. Steve McQueen, 5 movies in 1 year, Zach. In the comfort of your own home. Steve McQueen, 5 movies in the comfort of your own home. Yeah. They're movies. He said so. They played at film festivals. Count them all as one, I guess. Count them all as separate. But Red, White, and Blue, I think, is John Boyega's greatest performance. This is a movie that covers so much from the perspective of him trying to, or thinking that he's going to make a difference by joining the Force, whereas his father is doing the complete opposite in trying to get at the Force for a wrong that was done to him, and he just wants to see his day in court, his justice. I don't understand how he packed so much into just an hour 10. I've seen it 3 times. I'm sure Education will get on higher the more that I rewatch that one as well. But this one very comfortably is sitting here as one of the most powerhouse performances and some of the best directing that this man has done. And they all complement each other because that's the whole point of small acts. If you're the big tree, we're the small acts. And collectively, it's some of the most beautiful work that he's done. I love Steve McQueen. I love him so much. Top 3. So
good.
Red, White, and Blue.
Yeah. Yeah, Amanda, I know you got to catch up with this one recently.
I did, yeah. I finished watching it like just before we started, so I didn't have a lot of time to really think about how I would evaluate it in like the grand scheme of things. But yeah, it is just one of those, so many of these stories that they just stay with you when they're done. I still have 2 more from the series to catch up with, but like I loved this. I loved Education, so I haven't caught Mangrove, and I saw Lovers Rock. What's the other
Alex
one?
Wheatle.
Yeah,
Alex
I haven't
Wheatle,
seen that one.
I'm curious to see which one's your favorite.
I think Education, as of right now, is probably my top, but Red, White, and Blue is like they're neck and neck. Like it's neck and neck, those 2 performances. I'm just really taken by the different levels of stories that he's going through and that he's just sharing with the world. And again, like Art said, 5 movies, 5 weeks in a pandemic. Like how the hell?
Yeah,
what a gift.
He's the best.
You mentioned how Red, White, and Blue feels like a movie that really sticks with you, and I think a lot of that is from that ending, which is a little bit unresolved, but I think in the best way, where it leaves you kind of with the idea that this is a tough situation and there isn't an easy answer. And I think that's the best way you could end a movie with as much internal conflict as a film.
I'm looking
like
at the endings of all the movies on our list. That's something we really liked this year, didn't we? Endings that don't really have a positive outcome.
You mean in a year where we all felt in limbo and not sure about our future, we liked movies that had undetermined endings?
It's crazy, man.
You'd think it'd be the opposite. Weird. You'd think that we'd like the finality somewhere.
You know? But I don't know. There's something to it. It's like Zach said earlier in the year where we all felt the need to watch Contagion for comfort. What were we thinking? I don't know. But I think there's something in these endings still that it leaves us to ponder them and to think about them. And I think that makes them more effective than it tying it up in a bow. Because then it would throw away everything the movie was setting up. We're in our top 3. What you guys got?
Amanda.
Mine's going to be Karsten Runquist might be the only person who agrees with me. I got Kajillionaire at number 3.
Bro, I thought you were going to say Long Toast is my favorite.
No, I love Kajillionaire. I
Kajillionaire's
recently
great.
rewatched it again, and it actually pushed it up more on my list.
Nice.
I actually enjoyed it more.
I'm so glad.
Rewatching it, because sometimes you rewatch things and you're like, it doesn't have the same impact as it did the first time, but you notice more of the little subtle things that they're going for in the storytelling when you watch it the second time, and the little ways,
That's
like
cool.
when you know where the story's going, the little mannerisms and how things should be taken, and like how somebody who can be treated as an adult their entire life still ends up so stunted because they weren't given that proper childhood. This is a movie. It stars Evan Rachel Wood and Gina Rodriguez, and God, now I feel bad. I can't
Richard
remember those people's
Jenkins.
names. Thank you, Richard Jenkins. Can't remember the mom's name. I'm so sorry, ma'am. But it's really for me, it's all about Evan Rachel Wood and Gina
Killed it.
Rodriguez, they're basically, it's like a con family, and their whole life they've just been splitting things three ways, which is not how you have a family. You know, parents are providers, not three-way splitters. You know, but that's how they're fine skimming off the top. They don't trust society. They don't trust 401ks and retirement stuff. So even though they could make more working less, they're happy just to basically spend all of their time trying to scam their way around situations. And then they end up in a situation where they come across Gina Rodriguez's character.
That's so
and
interesting.
She starts, interacting her way in. And then, Evan Rachel Wood's character is like, why can't you treat me that way? And it's so heartbreaking in so many ways. But then again, it's one of those ones that it's like little moments, little handholds, little looks, little interactions that really just bring it together, and it was really beautiful, and it definitely held up for me on repeat viewing, and I'm excited to see it again. I really loved it, by Miranda July.
Deborah Winger, by the way,
Yeah.
is the actress.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Miranda July. I need to go back and watch more of her movies. What would you guys consider this? Like what genre?
I mean, it is
Drama?
kind of a comedy, but it is
That's
such
interesting. That's interesting.
such a indie,
'Cause it has a lot of comedy.
folksy comedy.
When y'all say comedy, when y'all say drama, I agree. I had it under like a heist thriller. That's what it was to me.
Well, yeah, it starts with a barrel roll, so
Right?
of course it's a heist thriller.
'Cause it's like-
just little thing. It's quirky. It's
Yeah.
fun. I think indie comedy charm. Yeah, but
It's
yeah,
like a-
heist has the right feel too.
They're con artists, but it's not just the con isn't just the stuff they're trying to get. It's also a con within the family. And like I remember I think we all got to catch it together at Sundance, and we left like, whoa, that was really interesting. In the midst of hearing all these people complain about it, Kajillionaire,
Right.
that would look like it was worth $3, not Kajillion. I was like, what?
I saw it alone, actually.
Oh, you didn't see it with us?
I wasn't with you guys. You dropped me off, and it was like a weird morning where like everybody was running late, and you were like, "Don't worry, Amanda, we'll get you to your movie on time."
Okay, well, I'm glad
And everyone else will
we
take a
got you
bus.
to it.
Yeah, you got me to my
Yeah.
movie. No, it was a really meaningful thing overall because Evan Rachel Wood touched my shoulder, so it was like a whole experience for me. It was great.
Yeah, I really like Kajillionaire.
Shouts out to Karsten, who we've mentioned a few times. He's basically the fourth guest on this podcast, but we were talking to him about this movie, and I described it as like almost like too beautiful for this world. There's just this precious quality to these characters and the kind of story it's trying to tell that like it makes me want to protect it. I don't know. I really dug the kind of story of nature versus nurture that Miranda July is crafting here. It's really beautifully told. I liked it a lot. So I'm glad that you put it on your list. It was maybe going to be one of my little gems that I don't want to forget about.
For sure.
Picks, so I'm glad that you brought it up on the bigger top 10 list.
Yo, our boy gave it 5 stars. You think he liked it?
That's why I said I think he liked it. That's why I knew he'd agree with me.
All right, so my number 3 is the movie that probably brought me the most joy out of any movie this year. I've rewatched it several times. It's something that I think will be a staple of lazy afternoons where I need something pleasurable on. It's Palm Springs, the Andy Samberg, Kristen Milotti film from Max Barbacow, Andy Sierra, previous guests of the Intercut podcast.
There you go.
Max Barbacow and Andy Sierra. Look, this is just a really well-crafted comedy with an interesting premise. I love all the ingenuity in approaching the Groundhog Day idea, but expanding it because you have these two people who go into the time loop together, and the way that the movie goes through different phases where it's kind of like goes through the depression and denial of the situation, and then the eventual acceptance and exploring like how would you actually deal with this situation. I think it just kept giving you interesting moments throughout. Plus, it's got a great cast. I think one of the things about these movies is that often it's so dependent on the lead male to carry the movie, but you have Kristen Milotti who is just giving the best comedic performance of the year in this movie. The movie feels like it's missing something whenever she leaves screen. She's so good.
I agree.
I just loved every second of this movie. There's so many dumb little jokes that I find myself thinking. Even a line that like doesn't even come across as a joke, like he glues teeth, is just stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
I love Palm Springs. I love this movie. I think comedies sometimes are not given the full credit for how hard they are to craft, how hard it is to just keep the jokes coming and keep it feeling fresh. And this was the standout comedy to me in 2020, in a year that actually had several good comedies.
I agree.
I would totally agree. I did really like it. It didn't quite make my top 10, but that's one of those ones that would have been swirling near the top. And I totally agree. And I also classify it as one of those give a shit movies. It's one of those ones that were the post-adolescent coming of age where you're just kind of trying to figure things out and realizing that, hey, it's not all useless. So big fan of that one too.
I think this one will grow on me because it's the Lonely Island Boys. Just a couple of years ago, they also had another Sundance pick. That is one of my favorite of all time, Brigsby Bear.
Right.
So it's like, I can see myself rewatching this one and liking it more and more. I love Christian Milioti, but like Zach said, like we said, we don't do interviews with somebody unless we really like them. So Zach, I shouldn't even be surprised. He was on board to have them on. And they have a great Let Us Explain up. So yeah, check this out. It's on Hulu, right?
Yeah, on Hulu, so easy to rewatch this one.
And in Canada, Amazon Prime.
Oh, cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
Art, I think we've arrived at your number 2.
Well, let's talk about Bad Education.
Awesome.
I think this is one of the best male lead performances of the year. And I think we have a stacked male performance, from Lindo to Hopkins to Boseman to Riz. I would have added Hugh in there, but hey, he got the Emmy nomination at least. But I absolutely adored this movie because every time I watch it, I'm capturing something new as someone who worked at a school and had a mom who worked within the school district as well. Yeah, this is Goodfellas, but it's happening in a school. Watch it. The writer went to the school in which this real life case happened.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a whole interview. We have a whole LME. It was one of my favorite LMEs. Those are one of those videos where even if it doesn't end up like blowing up, it's like I'm talking about a movie I absolutely adore. I think this is one of the best of the year, and I really wish it would have been in contention for Oscars. And now that we enter the streaming service, I think we're going to look back once rules change, maybe in the future, and we're going to go like, damn, how many movies were considered Emmy TV movies instead of actually getting the recognition they could have gotten at a bigger platform.
Yeah, it's one of those frustrating things when people try to delineate, like, this is cinema, this is TV.
This is the number 2 movie.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie, and it doesn't matter that it was on a streaming service or on HBO, the channel.
That's not, no, y'all ridiculous.
It's just a great movie, and I think... the fact that it was one of the standouts from TIFF also speaks to that.
Alice and Janney.
We like this movie a lot. We've talked about this movie a lot. There's plenty of content to go watch to see us talk about it
Bad
more.
Education, number 2.
All right. My number 2, another top male lead performance. I'm going with Sound of Metal.
Ooh.
This is just one of those ones that I haven't been able to get out of my head since I watched it. And I'm so glad I took the time to. I'm still bummed I didn't get to see it in a theatrical.
Bro, TIFF had it on IMAX.
I know, I didn't know that, but I'm always like super drawn to these, anything with music. I really like a lot of stuff that deals with kind of like that, counterculture or whatever, like punk, metal, hardcore, whatever, that kind of stuff. And it's just this like really beautiful story, but it subverts expectations in so many ways. Like, it sets stuff up to make you think like, oh, it's gonna just go down this direction, he's gonna do this, they're gonna do that, but it never ends up happening. But then in a way it kind of does. Just not to spoil it, but it's just, it's I don't even know if that would spoil it, but it's basically about a metal drummer who ends up losing his hearing and has to go through trying to, learning to be someone who's deaf and has to, learn the sign language and everything. And then trying to reconcile with that before kind of getting obsessed with the idea of trying to regain his hearing in some way and it never quite reaching that level. But the way that he's behaving, he was an addict and then kind of gets over it, but and you're like, it kind of really subverts expectations of when you have addicts or ex-addicts in movies, but then in a way it's kind of like he's still behaving like an addict in different ways. But it's just a really, really powerful performance, and just one of those ones that, again, if it doesn't necessarily have like the cleanest resolution, but it does as long as you know what it's going for. And it's just this beautiful, it's kind of, honestly, it's another one of those like soul moments. I actually saw the Letterboxd account compare it, where like he's looking up at the sun and just he's outside on a beautiful day and he just kind of has like this moment where it just kind of shifts for him, and then that kind of like sets off the movie to end it off. I thought it was really beautiful. I think it's definitely worth your time, and it's on Amazon if you're in Canada in America and have a VPN anywhere else. And then you can watch it.
Amanda's sound got a little bit wonky during the middle of that, so it was a very experiential review of Sound of Metal. It made me feel like I was also losing my hearing.
I didn't want to say anything. It went underwater, kind of like it did in the scene.
Yeah, because it's fine on my end, so they didn't hear it. But I thought it was I thought it was a really beautiful movie, and it's just stuck with me since I watched it.
We have a whole video.
Absolutely, exactly. We have a whole video talking about the merits of this movie, and I think it's a great example of one of those movies that introduces you to a culture that's not necessarily depicted that often in mainstream ways. And I think just the way in which you, like Riz Ahmed's character, get brought into this community is so riveting and revealing, and it's a remarkable movie.
Yeah, the sound design, that's another thing I can't mention enough.
Yeah, the sound design is great. And shout out Darius Martyr. He was going to make something with Derek Cianfrance with this, which is a little bit what we talked about. So it's got that meat and bones that I always look forward to. And Olivia Cooke did great in it. And Paul Risi, who I think may get a supporting nom. They've been really pushing him throughout the critic circles.
Yeah.
My number 2 is a movie that Amanda already mentioned. It was my number 1 when we did this back in July. It's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. The Eliza Hittman vehicle about a pair of teenagers who are crossing state lines in search of somewhere where they can get an abortion. I think it's a really remarkable film. We've talked about the restraint that Eliza Hittman has in telling the story and the really lived-in feel of it, because it is so... it feels like you're almost in a documentary, the way that the camera just hangs on these people from a distance in many times, and how it gives you the chaotic feeling of being stuck in a city where you don't know really where you are or where to go. I think it's so smart in the way that this movie is able to tell you a lot without explicitly saying any of it out loud, particularly through the Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always scene that we've talked about a lot on this podcast, because it gives you a really full picture of this character's life without really showing you much of her life. And it's remarkable filmmaking in that way. I think serves to humanize an issue that's often argued about in non-humanist ways. So I encourage anybody to check out this movie. I think it's remarkable and one of the standouts from this year. It stuck with me since I first saw it at Sundance, and I can't put this movie down. It's beautifully done.
Shout out Eliza Hittman. Shout out Sydney Flanagan.
Shout out Eliza Hittman. Come on Intercut Pod. You've liked a couple of our Instagram posts. I want you to come on the podcast.
If she's listening.
Everybody in that movie.
They killed it.
So good.
Talia Ryder, who played the cousin.
The cousins.
Y'all talked about that sequence between the two of them. And it was funny that you mentioned Unpregnant. They're both on HBO. Yeah. They're both on HBO Max.
I know.
So you have your option to catch both. That's great.
It's great.
It's a fantastic movie.
I loved it.
All right. It's time for our favorite movies of 2020. Art, you got to kick us off. What is the best film?
The best film
from this year?
the best American film, the best U.S. dramatic winning from the audience to the jury is Bad Boys for Life. The newest Minari stuck with me so much so that and Boy State were at the number one spot coming out of it. As I always say, as you rewatch stuff, I saw the trailer and that was enough. I was just rewatching the trailer with my mom and that was enough. This movie is everything and then some. It's not out yet, so I don't know what more to say other than it's my number one movie of the year. Everyone has been hyping it up through all of the festivals. People are arguing for it because of the Globe stuff. They haven't even seen it yet. Right. It lives up to the hype is now. It used to be like, oh, we got to hype this up, right? I had a little video on LME as a review for it. No one knows about it. It's getting hyped up. Now it's just telling you, believe the hype. It hits on all the cylinders. It's got comedy in it. It's got drama in it. It's a relationship movie. It's a family movie. It is an immigrant story. It's an American story. What's it missing, Zach? What more do you need in a film? I don't know. I was craving Mountain Dew after it.
Art, I think we should host a podcast together. I got Minari at number one as well. I loved this movie back at Sundance, and it hasn't left that top spot for me. And I agree with you. It's a little bit hard to even talk about some of the pleasures of this movie because it is, in some ways, very ordinary. It's the story of this Korean-American family who have bought a farm in Oklahoma, hoping that this is going to give them the slice of the American dream that they desire. And it's a little bit about getting used to new surroundings, but it's also just a little bit about like the small pleasures of life and the small moments that are very relatable in growing up. I think this movie is so tenderhearted and earnest in its depiction of childhood that it just won me over. And it all builds to this moment where there's a little bit of chaos towards the end of the movie, but I was in tears both times that I saw it. It's just such a beautiful film, such a well-articulated story. And I think sometimes when a movie is that good, you can't really define what is magical about it. There is just a certain magic to, Lee Isaac Chung's movie here? I was so happy at the end of Minari to have seen it. I am very eager for more people to get the chance to see it as it expands. It is one of these movies that is in this weird like 2020, 2021 limbo, but because it did get like a bit of a virtual theatrical release, I feel it's fair to cover it here because it's the movie we've been hyping up since January. We've been talking about it on Intercut, but for 12 months now about how amazing this film is.
It's going to be in the 2020 festival circuit.
So good.
For the 2020 festival circuit. So yeah, easily. Stephen Yeun knocked it out of the park. He is doing this isn't even his first time doing a bilingual performance, bro. Bilingual performance. Kind of like The Half of It, another movie that I really enjoyed that's on Netflix that showcased this duality of a character, not only from a religious standpoint, but also from their own, introspective standpoint and their own identity. This movie doesn't judge all the religious aspects of it. It is so rare to see a movie that is more lived in and is trying to understand all of the characters and the people who are here instead of judging them, instead of treating them like pawn pieces or something else, because you get a lot of movies that feel like that. This is why did I give this 5 stars, man? I really do think this is 5 stars. Like, it is one of the best of the year.
It's beautiful.
Best of the decade. Yeah. We're starting the decade, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about it right now. This will be at the end of the decade.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and we definitely are hoping that this is going to go a long way in terms of awards season. Cause
it's deserved.
It deserves it.
It should.
Yeah.
And that's why it really bothers me that the Globes is literally ignoring just because of a language thing. They're ignoring. It's an American-made movie. You can't just decide that it's not. Which is weird to me. I guess that it's a foreign language distinction.
It was frustrating when they did that for The Farewell, and it's doubly frustrating for doing it for Minari since that film takes place entirely in America.
In America, like A Farewell, it's like, well, it's mostly in China, but still not the right place for it. But Minari is so American. It's so American. But that brings it down to me and my number one, in which I cheat and pick Portrait of a Lady on Fire again.
Man, because y'all want to give me stuff for Shiva Baby.
it only released in 2020. That's the only way people could actually watch it. So it's my number one.
That's fair.
Yes. On a technicality, you get to pick Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I told y'all,
let them technicalities pass. Let's just talk about the stuff we love. I don't care. Talk about it.
Like, normally I want to try to, like, highlight things that, you know, I haven't talked about in detail, which is why I bumped a couple of other things off this list, because I've talked about them so many other times at this point. But Portrait is just something that has stayed with me since I saw it. I saw it at TIFF because of a mistake, actually. For some reason, I hadn't looked into it, and I just know that you and Alina mentioned you were seeing it that day, and it was right after I rewatched Honey Boy at TIFF, and it was playing in the same auditorium. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll just swing back and meet up with them. And then I'm like waiting in line, and I'm like, at the Bell Lightbox, man, the perfect auditory experience for something like Portrait. Oh, it's so good. It's just so, it was beautiful. And I'm just sitting there alone because you was like, no, we have tickets for it later. And I was seeing a press showing. I'm like, oh no, that's totally fine. I don't mind, because I had nothing scheduled at that time. And it was so beautiful. It was my one of the first day watches. It stayed with me ever since. I got the Criterion Blu-ray.
Same.
They release it in a 4K way. I'm going to get it in 4K. Like, it's so beautiful. It's just, I've talked about it so much, but if you haven't seen Portrait of a Lady on Fire yet, I absolutely urge you to do so. Just absolutely stunning, and I'm still upset that France doesn't seem to understand it.
And that's the main reason why I think it's worth talking about, because again, we've been saying this, and now we're in it with these streaming services. You know, now that Neon put it on Hulu, that was a whole other, you know, if you didn't have an art house theater near you, do you really think everyone's playing it? No. So it is available in America, you know, when it was released in theaters, but it still wasn't really available to everybody. And I think to a lot of people, it's split between 2019, 2020. It is a movie that deserves mentions all the time. Because, France didn't submit it. They submitted Les Miserables, which I really do enjoy. But to think it didn't get any Oscar recognition, but it was early 2020 where they made their stamp. Even walking out at that one award show, like, this is a movie that's going to last for a long time.
I love that. Oh, love it. So, I cheated. That's my number one. Pack it
all
in.
Good here. All welcomed here.
Yeah. So looking back at the movies that we took in our best movies of 2020 so far list, Art, you only kept 2 of your choices. I only kept 2 of my choices. Amanda, you only kept Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always from that list. So despite the weird year that 2020 was, we had 10 movies we loved back then and 10 more that we're talking about now. There's plenty of choices, and I think we had less overlap than I was expecting on our lists too. So
to be fair, I went out of my way to avoid some, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I think we still were able to talk about plenty of really interesting movies that came out in this strange year. So, you know, lots of stuff to check out. Hopefully we've given you a lot of recommendations that you'll keep on your radar, because these were all movies that brought us a great deal of pleasure in this year.
Very good. And we're always curious to hear your thoughts. So if you have any movies that we may have missed, other ones that, maybe the release, we got a lot of recommendations where people were telling us, yo, I caught this, watch it. I'm like, there's no trailer for this yet. I literally cannot watch this. So those will be 2021 movies. But if they were a 2020 for you, I love seeing that, because then that gets me hyped up for what to see in this upcoming year. And then vice versa. Some movies we may have gotten in 2019, I know some people barely got for this year. But the more that we got this accessibility, maybe one day, I don't know, maybe they'll create an internet worldwide web where everyone can watch something at the same time, and then find a way to kind of ruin that. But nonetheless, it's just always a joy to talk about movies with you guys.
Yeah, same. Definitely let us know if you have a top 10 list. You can leave it in the comments down below. We'd love to see how your lists overlap with ours and where they may be different. You can also shoot us an email, intercutpod@gmail.com, and let us know what movies you loved from 2020. But that's about all for this installment of Intercut. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. That's ZSHEV as in vast of night, ICH. And Amanda, where can people find more from you?
You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, any of the above, and probably some other places at Amanda the Jedi.
Arturo?
You can find me at LME, that's E as in Minari, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Letterboxd, and every week here on the Intercut podcast.
You can catch every episode of the Intercut podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. I like Overcast. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed as well on youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can watch our bright smiling faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of Intercut every Monday. Please leave us a comment, like the video, and consider heading over to iTunes to give us a 5-star review. Like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. All of them are at IntercutPod to get updates throughout the week from Art, from Amanda, from me, from all the guests that we feature here on Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, Grandma smells like Korea.